Hi, to make a quick video on the question of why don't people leave when they're in, let's say, an abusive relationship. And this is like an important question because people use the concept a lot of why didn't they leave to either mean that these things didn't happen because if they happened, that person would have left. Or it can mean, well, maybe they happened, but the person either wanted it or deserved it because they didn't leave. And so I think there's like really two main categories of why people don't leave. The first is practical, and the second is psychological. And the first category is there can be situations where it's really fucking hard to leave. Like in my situation, I didn't have access to any money. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have ID cards. I didn't have friends or family I could go stay with. So, like, where was I going to go? Like, I could walk out the door, but what do you do? Like, just try walking out your door sometime. Like, don't have a phone, don't have any money, don't be in a strange city, you know, with no car. And where are you going to do? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? It's like, I didn't know. I had no idea. I didn't really know how things worked very well. I had no idea how to get from point A to point B. It seemed impossible, and I didn't feel like I could talk to anyone about it because I didn't want to make anyone else look bad, and I felt ashamed of being in that situation, and I didn't know who to talk to or what to say anyway. Like, hey, can you teach me everything? And and also let me live with you, stranger. You know, it's like, how do you do that? I mean, it's not easy to even make friends just walking out your door with no money and no knowledge and no career and no anything. It's not easy to do. Especially, you know, when you're married, so it's not like you're going to like hook up with some guy and he's going to be a friend. So that's one thing. And it's like I would call the domestic hotline a lot, and they would like be like, you need to leave, and they'd like refer me to resources. But when I'd follow up the resources, there wasn't actually anything there. It was just dead ends, you know? It was just like names of charities that people can tell you to call, but you actually call them and they don't have anything to offer you. But it makes everyone feel better to know that they exist, because in their mind you could call them and they would help you, you know? So just the idea that there's all these resources for people is not really true. I did eventually find resources that helped me, but that took like 6 years. So, I mean, that's the first thing is people, if you have stuff like money and bank accounts and phones and cars and friends and family, you might not always realize how hard it is to get to that point, especially if you have to gain all that stuff in secrecy and you don't know how, you know. Okay, so the second thing is psychological. And this part, I honestly don't understand myself because I've thought a lot about it. Because like when I was a student in school, I had a boyfriend who was very abusive, and but he wasn't violent. It was in other ways, and so anyway, but in that point, I had a car, I had my parents' money, I had, you know, friends at school. I didn't need him at all for anything. I wasn't dependent on him, and he was mean as fuck. He was really mean, but I couldn't leave him. Like, when I say I couldn't, I mean, you know, like how, like, someone hands you a knife, and they're like, cut off your right arm, and if you cut off your right arm, everyone in the world will be saved, you know, so do this for humanity. Can you bring yourself to do that? I bet you fucking couldn't. I bet you couldn't. Because the thing about it is I wasn't a wuss person. I wasn't at all. Like, my whole philosophy was about inflicting pain on myself in order to get tougher. I was trying to be like a Spartan, you know. I would try to constantly torture myself so that I would have the ability to do painful things, you know? So I was not like, it wasn't like a suck it up buttercup sort of situation. Because he would make me torture myself, and then I would do it for him, but I could not fucking leave him. I don't know why. I couldn't. It's really hard to explain. I mean, it felt like I couldn't, you know? Could I in the ultimate sense? Presumably, but I wasn't able to. So that's like a dynamic that I honestly don't really understand, but all I can say is there's something that goes on that keeps people there, this invisible, and I don't know what it is, but I do know that just because a person is in that situation does not mean that they're a piece of shit person. You know, it doesn't mean that they're irresponsible. I wasn't an irresponsible person. It doesn't mean that they are afraid, they're trying to avoid discomfort, because fuck, it's a lot of discomfort to be in those relationships. You know, it's like, I don't know why people stay, but there's something, like a really strong force that causes people to. And you know, I think one question to ask, like, you know, like normally people want to know why they don't leave. What they really want to know is that it's okay to not worry about this themselves, right? Because it's like, why didn't they leave is really, I mean, I think that, like, when we deal with situations, we generally have a lot of thought processes in our minds, with the goal of the thoughts being that we don't have to feel bad for that person. We don't have to worry about that person. It's not our job to do anything. It's like we instantly start having those thoughts when we're faced with any of those situations, you know? Because we don't want to be bothered with it. I mean, everyone does that. But you know, so I think the thing about it is this. It's like, you could come up with reasons why it's the person's fault that they didn't leave, you know? Even if fault is kind of just a philosophical concept that no one really understands. But it's like, at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're just trying to really separate yourself from the situation. And why? Like, what is the point of trying to detach yourself from other people's problems? Like, does that really ultimately benefit you? And I really think it doesn't. That we have to, like, get over that hands-off approach to other people's lives, because I feel like domestic violence is kind of a situation where you really do need people who have nothing to do with the situation to care. You know what I mean? Because it's like, the only person who officially is supposed to care about you is your husband and stuff. But if that person is hurting you, then it's nobody's job. There's no one else in the world whose job it is to care, you know? And so I think that kind of is an example of how we should care about other people's problems, because those people might not have anyone else. And a stranger caring can be like the thing that literally makes all the difference. I mean, that was what it was for me. It was like people who really had no, you know, people say, oh, I don't have a horse in this race. But it was only the people who didn't have a horse in the race who really were able to help me to leave and stuff. So I think that, I think that it's worth it to care, even if, I think it's worth it to care